Who's your second best pass rusher?
That's a good question. I think we've got a number of guys that I'm excited about. Obviously Janze is kind of the most experienced guy in the room, and I think he's taken his game to another level. So I'm excited to see that in real time on game day. But I think Devin Tompkins does a really good job. I think Desmond Zulu brings a lot to the table there. Excited about a young guy in Xavier Griffin and what he brings to the table, similar to. We use Jihad in a number of different ways, and I think he kind of has that similar skill set, an outside linebacker background with being able to play the inside linebacker position as well. And then, there's a couple of guys in Cavante Henry and Justin Hill that bring different varieties to the table. So, I mean, you kind of got to see, like, who's the hot hand, right? Who's the guy that when the bullets are flying are going to step up. But certainly if you look at Devin's career, you look at Dez, Zulu, and then obviously Janze, those guys are the most experienced to this point.
Jeremiah Beeman turns ACL. What's your message to him?
Those are hard. Sometimes you just got to sit with somebody in some really hard stuff, and that's, he worked so hard to get himself ready to go. And put himself in a really good position, was taking strides in the right direction. And then to have this injury again about the same time he did last year, it's a hard thing to go with. And so sometimes it's not what you say, it's just sitting with somebody, in that moment.
Is it same knee or different knee?
I believe it's the same knee. Yeah, same knee.
What kind of role do you envision for Jamarian out at his back, and how does that compare to what he was doing before?
Zebo. Okay, all right. Well, I get Jamari Matthews, and Latham. Zebo's he's a great football player. And so, he's kind of always been our Swiss Army knife. He can do multiple things for us. I think you guys will see him, at our boundary wolf position, at the field bandit position. He used to play 3 technique for us as well in a pinch, and even on some third down pass rush situations, he can do that. Good football players just find their way on the field, and Zebo is just a really good football player.
Is that your message to the defensive lineman after Jeremiah in terms of stepping up? Who's kind of next up?
Those guys know the drill. I mean, that happens. You're going to sustain injuries on the defensive line. It's a very physical position. We typically carry more bodies on roster. We carry more bodies into the game plan. And so, that's a pretty natural, nobody likes to see a guy hurt, right? But they just kind of operate in that next man up mentality. And so I think our guys are ready to, to step in where they need to. The thing that we've tried to do in the offseason is create more depth in our defense by position versatility, right? And so most of our guys on the interior can play multiple positions. We have some guys that are playing the bandit position that can also move inside and play the 3 technique for us as well. And so I think we've generated a little bit more depth by position versatility than maybe where we were in the past.
If you had to give Keelan Russell a grade for how he's performed in the scrimmages against your defense, what grade would you give him?
I think Keelan. I don't know if I don't watch it like that from that standpoint of being able to say what a grade I could give on him. When you go against him, you feel like there's a lot of variables you have to defend, right? And so I look at it from a standpoint of what do I have to defend to be able to take this guy away? And there's things that he can certainly do with his feet, both in the run game, scrambling ability, but the decisions he makes. There's just guys, and you see these type of guys over the years that can see the field naturally, right? They just have a natural instinctive vision for the field, and they can work through a progression very quickly and find an open man, and Keelan has it. And so that allows him, right, there's a higher ceiling for guys like that that have that type of field vision. And so when I think about, okay, how am I going to defend him in a game, there's just a lot of variables to have to defend that I would prefer not to have to defend as a defensive coordinator. Yeah, I mean, Luke Metz is really our other starter right now, but those other guys have done a really good job. I'm pleased with that room. Chuck Morrell has done a fantastic job with the development in that room. You're going to see a number of guys in there, but certainly Luke and Caleb will be the first 2 out.
What kind of camp does Joe Kirkpatrick have for you
Dre's another one. Like, you talk about just a good football player, and when he gets on the field, he just makes plays, and he usually makes plays in big moments. Scrimmages, he always seems to step up. Team move the ball periods, right? He always seems to step up, and so he's another guy that there's a lot of position versatility and things that we feel like we can do with him. His ability to make plays on the ball. I told our guys before, the way you're going to get on the field is to do your job to a consistent level that we trust you, and create value by playmaking ability, right? And I think Dre is trending in the right direction there. Yeah, I think so. I think, that Husky position, there's a lot we ask out of that position, and there's a lot of different traits and skill sets, right, that you would like to have, because you got to be able to play man, you got to be able to blitz off the edge, play variations of zone, fit the run game, and so Dre being a very instinctive football player, right, that kind of fits him, and it's an opportunity to get him around the ball and blitz him off the edge as well. That's why Red is so good, at that stuff as well. And so Dre, we feel like Dre can play the Husky, he can play the Rover position. He's been in this defense for 3 years. He could play the free safety. But I think you'll see him a decent amount at both that Rover and Husky spot for us.
What have you seen from Chuck McDonald at camp too?
Chuck has really taken some great strides. Here's a guy that in year one, sometimes you have guys that it just takes a minute, right, for them to kind of get their bearings and grasp what we're doing defensively. And then you have to tie that in with the fundamental work. Maurice Lindquist is just, he's as good as it gets when it comes to developing those guys fundamentally. And so his man skills have greatly improved. His understanding and anticipation has improved, which is very valuable at that nickel position for us. But Chuck can play both nickel and corner. And so that was something a year ago, we probably couldn't put on his plate. And so his stock arrow is going up right now.
What have you seen from Kedrick and Edric?
Kedrick and Edric, yeah. Cool. Tried to trick me with that one. Yeah. So both those guys, I think are, Edric has put a decent amount of weight on from where he was last year. A year ago, we were having a hard time keeping him even above that 280 mark, which is not good, for an interior defensive lineman. And as I've said, right, that was a huge point of emphasis for us of bringing in guys, right, that have bigger measurables, and then also developing the guys within. And so I think he's somewhere in that 295 range right now, and holding well even through fall camp. So that's exciting from that standpoint. KBJ is just he is just, again, like a really good football player. He's kind of got that crafty old man to him, a little bit, like he's seen all the tricks of the trade, right? He knows how to disengage and get off a block. I think that's the thing. I knew we were going to get a really steady football player, but I've been impressed with his ability to get off of blocks and make plays in the backfield. And so he's certainly, from what I saw on tape, has taken his game, and improved upon it, which is exciting.
Edwards, that you're kind of expecting to contribute as a freshman when he's dealing with an injury. It's not your job to get him back physically, but kind of how do you keep him engaged mentally and learning the defense?
That's the question, right? Like that's the challenge for Jaira, and we've already had those conversations. Let's say it takes whatever X amount of weeks to get him back and ready to go. Well, when he gets back, right, if he hasn't stayed engaged, if he's not, part of our walkthroughs, if he's not doing things from a meeting standpoint, then all of a sudden now he gets back physically, but mentally, right, it may take 2 or 3 more weeks to go. And so the challenge is, when you physically can do it, are you mentally in position to be able to go out and execute quickly? And so we're trying to bridge that gap and narrow that margin as best as possible. He is obsessed with the game of football. And so he's one that I probably, don't have to keep my thumb on him in that regard, because he loves it and he's going to stay engaged, and he's already out there doing those things. So he was in meetings this morning, which is really impressive. So, but he will be one that we will, as soon as he gets back, right, we will want to get him on the field as quickly as possible, because he will be a very productive player in our defense. You know, probably Luke's anticipation and the confidence in being able to pull the trigger. You know, he just sees he sees the run fits so much better right now. He's got a little bit of a field general presence. I mean, when you watch him on game day, you know, watch the way he communicates out there and the way he points things out and plays with anticipation. I mean, it's the way you want a linebacker to play the game, right? The best production always comes from a defense that can anticipate what is coming next, right? And he is greatly improved in that regard, and I think we're going to see, you know, good production because of that.
When it comes to setting the edge on defense against the run, how important is it to make sure that you're not only scheming up somebody to be out there in the right position, but it's somebody who's athletic enough to handle it, especially to the field side?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you think about you know, setting the edge to a defense, right? The schematic piece, right? How do you leverage it from a number standpoint and from an angle? But then that person has to make the play, right? And so, you know, we spend a significant amount of time in tackling. I think we are in a really good place. We kind of transitioned to some scout work today, and when we do our scout work, you know, whether it's a thud period or a tag period, really taking the air out of the ball and making sure that they're getting that right foot and right shoulder in position to strike, or left foot, left shoulder, you know, so that when we get to game day and it's live, all the fundamental work has happened to the point of making contact, right? And so our guys have done a nice job in that regard, but ultimately, you know, sometimes when you play certain offenses and you play certain personnel, it's, you know, I could leverage it a number of different ways schematically, but I'm going to make sure I do it with the guy that I think can get the guy on the ground ultimately. And so that's a good question. All right. Thanks, guys. Roll Tide.